So today we're going to look at games blocks in the microbit. And when we're talking about the games blocks, we're talking about a number of blocks such as create sprite, score, game over, turn, if on edge, bounce, and move. And there's lots of other ones in there. But before we do that, let's talk about games. So when we're talking about a game, so we're going to create basic games where we have maybe something like 2 sprites or 2 characters. So when you're talking about games, a character is a sprite. So if we're creating a sprite, we're creating a character for the game. We also have a score block, and here I suppose you might ask, well, why would I use a score block in the games rather than create my own score? And the reason for that is that because it's you've got very little room on the microbit to display anything. So if you're displaying a score, then it's taking quite a lot of time to do that. So when you use a score block with the games, then if you increase the score or decrease the score, it's going to do something visual on the microbit, and you get that without having to do anything. So we'll look at that when we create our game later. You also have a game over block, and that will allow you that when the game is over, it will take over and it will just do, so it will show the game over, it will show the score at the end, and it does all that again without you having to do it. You can turn, so when you've got a character or a sprite on the little microbit, then you can turn that character and that allows you to move them around. You also have this idea of if on edge bounce, so for those of you who have coded with Scratch previously, you know the concept of if on edge bounce. For those of you who haven't, what if on edge bounce does is when you hit an edge of the microbit, it bounces back. So it allows you to go to the end and just bounce back. You also have a move block, and that allows you to move your character or your sprite once you have it created. So, as with all of these, let's have a look at working through these concepts through a games project. So, in the on start, we're going to set up our initialization. So, we're going to set our score to 0, and that just resets the score every time you start the project. We're also going to create 2 sprites. One we're going to call Tom and the other we're going to call Jerry. And again, you can call them anything you want. And then you can say where you want them to be created. So in the case of Tom, we're going to create Tom at position 2, 2, and that is at row 2, column 2. So we're going to go right in the middle of the microbit. And then we're going to create a sprite called Jerry at position 0, 2. So we're going to go at the left-hand side down in the middle. So those are going to be our 2 sprites. So that's our initialization done. Then when we press the A button, we're going to repeat 4 times. We're going to turn Tom. So remember, Tom is the character that is right in the middle. We're going to turn him right by 90 degrees. We're going to do a pause. We're going to move him by 1, and then we're going to pause again. So what that's going to do is it's going to move Tom in a square. So he's going to go right. So turn right 90 degrees, pause, move 1, turn right 90 degrees, pause, move 1, and so on. It's just going to keep going. So it's going to do a square and then stop where it was. So we're repeating that 4 times. When the B button is pressed, we're going to repeat 8 times. So we're going to turn him left this time by 45 degrees. And that's why we've got the 8 times, because if we do that 8 times, 8 by 45 will bring us back to the 360. So he'll do 1 complete revolution. But this time he's going to go in an anti-clockwise direction, and he's going to go at 45 degrees. He's going to pause. We're going to move him by 1, and so on. So he'll kind of go in a circular, in as much as you can do in a circular fashion when the B button is pressed. And then finally, when the A and B buttons are pressed together, we're going to have a loop in there. So we're saying while the score is less than 10, then we're going to move Jerry. So the A and B buttons move Tom, and then the A plus B button is going to move Jerry. And he's just going to keep moving by 1. He's going to pause. And then if he's touching Tom, we're going to change the score by 1. So remember, the score was set to 0 at the start. So every time they touch off each other, it's going to go up by 1. And then if Jerry is on edge, we bounce. So we just bounce back again. When we fall out of the loop, so when the score gets to 10, then it's going to fall out of the loop. And then we get our game over. So this game is going to run for 10 times that they touch. And once it gets to 10, then it's going to fall out of the loop. So in this little project, we're bringing together a lot of what we've done for the last few weeks. So we have a score variable. So that's our variable here. We've got an if statement or a selection structure. And we also have a loop. So this is bringing together, and this is one way of bringing together a lot of the concepts that you have. So we'll go to makecode.com now and get this coded. So if we go to the microbit, we're going to make a new project. And when we're in this new project, we're going to go to advanced, and you'll see that this is where all of your games blocks are. So you've got the create sprite, you've got delete sprite, you can move that sprite, you can do lots of different things. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set our score to 0. So that's in the onStart. I'm just going to get rid of the forever because we don't need it. And now we're going to go to variables. We're going to make 2 variables. So we're going to call one Tom. And then I'm just going to make another variable, and I'm going to call it Jerry. So now what I need to do is I want to create a sprite called Tom at position 2, 2. So if I set Tom, so I'm going to pull this across, and I'm going to set Tom to, and then if I go down to the games block, I can create sprite at 2, 2. So that's setting up Tom. And then I want to go back to variables, and I want to set Jerry. And you'll notice here now that when it starts again, there's Tom right in the middle. If I set Jerry to, and if I go to game here and create a sprite, and I can set it to 0, 2, now you should see that it has both sprites on the little microbit. Okay, so that's the initialization. Now we want to go to on button A pressed. So I pull across my button A pressed, and then I'm going to go to loops. I'm going to pull across repeat 4. So remember, we want to get it to move in a square. So we repeat 4. And then I'm going to go to the game block, and I'm going to turn right. So I've got Tom, turn right by 90 degrees. I'm going to go to basic and pull in the pause, and I'm going to pause for 200 milliseconds. And then I'm going to go back to the games block, and I'm going to move by 1. And again, remember always to change it from sprite to the name of your sprite. And then I'm just going to duplicate this, and it should be down here. So there's my pause. So now when I test it, if I press my button A, you'll see it's moving pretty quickly in a square. I'm going to duplicate this because I'm doing quite similar things with the B button. So I'm just going to get rid of that pause. I don't need it. I am going to go here on button B pressed. This time I'm going to repeat by 8 times. And instead of turning right, I'm going to turn left. And I'm going to turn left by 45 degrees. So again, I'm going to pause by 200. And I'm going to move by 1 and pause again. So this time when I press the button B, you'll see it's kind of going up in a circle and coming back. Now it's getting caught at the top, so it's kind of truncating the circle. If I press the A button, it goes in a square again. And if I press the B button, it now goes in the circle again. And you'll see when the two of them touch, so if I go here again, so you'll see it disappears at one point, and that's because the two of them are on the same position. So that's my A button and my B button, and now I want to code the A and B button together. So here, if I go to input and pull across on button A plus B, so what I'm doing this time is I'm using another loop. So this time I'm checking to see, and I've got while. Now I need to create my condition here. So when I'm doing that, I want to check while score is less than 10. So I'm going to go into logic, and I'm going to find my less than. I just drop that in there. If I go to variables, my apologies, if I go to game, I will find the score, and that's down the end. So I'm going to pull across score. So I'm saying while the score is less than 10, then I'm going to keep doing whatever it is. So what I want to do now is I want to move Jerry by 1. I'm going to pull across. So within the loop, I'm saying Jerry, move by 1. And then I'm going to do a pause. So again, I'm just going to pull that across. Now again, you can change the length of the pauses, and that will slow down or quicken your game. So I'm moving Jerry by 1, I'm pausing, and then I'm putting in an if statement. So I'm going to logic, I'm going to pull across an if, and this time I don't have an else, so I'm just going to pull across the if true. And what I'm saying is if Jerry is touching Tom, so if I go into the games block here, you can see that there's a touching here. So you can say, is sprite touching? And there's a few different things you can put in there. But for now, we're just going to say, if Jerry is touching Tom, so I can go back to variables here, and I can pull across Tom. So if Jerry is touching Tom, well, I want to change score by 1. So come down here to where the score is. You've got your set score, but you also have change score by 1. So I'm changing the score by 1, and then I'm also saying within that loop that if I go to game here, I want an if on edge bounce. So here I've got if on edge bounce, and I can put that after the if statement. And I'm saying if Jerry is on the edge, then bounce him back. Okay. And then the final thing we want to do is outside of the loop, because if we've fallen out of the loop now, it's going to be game over. So I want to find the game over block here, and that should now be coded as I wanted to. So again, let's just check that Tom is working as he should be. So I'm pressing the A button and he's going in a square. If I press the B button, he goes in a kind of a circle that's truncated a little bit at the top because he hits the top. And then if I press the A plus B button, Jerry just keeps moving over and back, over and back, over and back. So now if I get them to collide, so now you can see they've collided, and that's what I'm talking about with the score. When they collide, you can see it, it's visual. So now they're colliding again. I'll get them to collide again. So that's 3, 4, and again, we'll just keep on going. And it should show us game over at some point. So again, the score is just going up. But again, we are restricted because we don't have, so again, the score has changed there and again. So we can't be far off the score of 10 now. Just missing it every time. My timing is not good on this. There we go. And now it's flashing over and over again. And now it's going to show us the game over. So just by using the score and the game over blocks, it gives us that. So you can see it's quite visual, which is what you need. It shows you game over and then it shows you the score of 10. Now there's a few other things that you can look at here within, and it just keeps saying game over. So there's a few other things that you can look at here within the games blocks. So you can delete a sprite, you can set the X position or change the X position, or you can also check the Y position or the direction and so on. You can also, if we go down here, you can get the X position or the Y position of a particular sprite. You can check to see if a sprite is touching the edge. And again, you've got lives here. So you know with any game, you've got, you often have a score and lives working hand in hand. So you can set the number of lives to say 5 at the start, remove a life if they touch. So rather than going the score way, you could actually go with lives and use that to count down rather than the score, and that's entirely up to yourself. You could have a countdown, so you can have a timer in there, and that you only have a certain amount of time. So these are things that you can do to make your games a little bit more interactive. Now, as I said at the start, it is challenging to create a game on the microbit, but it's not impossible to do. So hopefully you'll find this screencast helpful using the games blocks.